नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, King Yayati achieves liberation. Text number 3. Vastaha ekaha vane kaschit. Vasta eko vane kaschit. Vichinman priyam atmanaha. Vichinman priyam atmanaha. Dadarsha kूपे पतितम्. ददर्शकूपे पतितम्. स्वकर्म वशगाम् अजाम्. स्वकर्म वशगाम् अजाम्. बस्त एको वने कश्चित्. विचिन्वन् प्रियमात्मनः. ददर्शकूपे पतिताम्. स्वकर्म वशगाम् अजाम्. बस्त एको वने कश्चित्. विचिन्वन् प्रियमात्मनः. ददर्शकूपे पतिताम्. स्वकर्म वशगाम् अजाम्. Bastah, goat. Ekah, one. Vane, in a forest. Kaschit, some. Vichinman, searching for food. Priyam, very dear. Atmanaha, for himself. Dadarsha, saw by chance. Kupe, within a well. Patitam, fallen. Swakarma vashagam, under the influence of the results of fruitive activities. Acham, a she-goat. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Charnaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. While wandering in the forest, eating to satisfy his senses, a he-goat by chance approached a well in which he saw a she-goat standing helplessly, having fallen into it by the influence of the results of fruitive activities. With the translation. While wandering in the forest, eating to satisfy his senses, a he-goat by chance approached a well in which he saw a she-goat standing helplessly, having fallen into it by the influence of the results of fruitive activities. Purport. Here Maharaja Yayati compares himself to a he-goat and Devayani to a she-goat and describes the nature of man and woman. Like a he-goat, a man searches for sense gratification, wandering here and there, and a woman without the shelter of a man or husband is like a she-goat that has fallen into a well. Without being cared for by a man, a woman cannot be happy. Indeed, she is just like a she-goat that has fallen into a well and is struggling for existence. Therefore, a woman must take shelter of her father as Devayani did when under the care of Shukracharya. And then the father must give the daughter in charity to a suitable man, or a suitable man should help the woman by placing her under the care of a husband. This is shown vividly by the life of Devayani. When King Yayati delivered Devayani from the well, she felt great relief and requested Yayati to accept her as his wife. But when Maharaja Yayati accepted Devayani, he became too attached and had sex life not only with her but with others like Sharmishtha. Yet still he was dissatisfied. Therefore, one should retire by force from such family life as Yayati's. When one is fully convinced of the degrading nature of worldly family life, one should completely renounce this way of life, take sannyas, and engage himself fully in the service of the Lord. Then one's life will be successful. Thus ends the Bhaktivinoda purport and translation to Canto 9, Chapter 19, text number 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shukadeva Goswami is continuing to describe Maharaja Parikshit about the story of King Yayati. So here he is saying that once, while wandering in the forest, King Yayati, Vichinman Priyamatmanaha, King Yayati, desiring to satisfy his senses, Priyam Atmanaha, was Vichinman searching for some food, meaning he was trying to search for the object of his sense gratification. So when he was wandering the forest to eat something, Vichinman Priyamatmanaha, Basta Ekaha. Actually, Maharaja Yayati is describing his story to the would-be wife Devayani by using figurative speech. Figurative speech means instead of narrating his own life or one's own life, one will use an example of somebody else or something else to indicate their own life story, and in that way bring about a moral and a lesson for themselves or for others. That's called figurative speech. So instead of telling directly, express indirectly. That's called figurative speech. But it will be indicating their life, their situation. As opposed to literal speech. Literal speech means directly you explain. Just like Yayati, actually after enjoying so much of sense gratification with his wife and his wife's assistants, maid servants, Sharmishta and others, still his lust was not satisfied. So he wants to explain that idea to Devayani. Therefore, he is using figurative speech. What is the figurative speech used here? About a he-goat and a she-goat. See, so he is beginning to narrate this story of a goat explaining his own situation to his wife. So here he is saying once there was a he-goat who was wandering in the forest. It was actually Yayati who was wandering in the forest. And he felt little hunger, so he got down from his horse and wanted to eat something and drink something. So he approached nearby well. Similarly, he is saying this he-goat, while wandering in the forest, vane kaschid, vichinman priyamatmanaha, basta ekaha, this he-goat, vichinman priyamatmanaha, trying to satisfy his senses, to get some food. He approached a nearby well, Kupe. But when he approached the well, Dadarshu Kupe Patitam Ajam. He saw one Ajam, a she-goat. Dadarsha Kupe Patitam. And he saw that she-goat had fallen, Patitam Kupe, fallen into the well. Standing helplessly in the well, having fallen into the well. Swakarma Vashagham. Why did she fall into the well? Having fallen into the well, Vashagham, because of the influence, Vashaha, influence, Vashagham, influence, because of the influence of Swakarma, the results of the goat's own activities. Because of the influence of the results of one's own fruitive activities. So he saw the she-goat had fallen into the well because of its own results of fruitive activities. Thereby, he is actually explaining to Devayani that Devayani also had fallen into the well, and Maharaja Yayati approached this well to quench his thirst, but he was surprised to see this girl here standing helplessly inside the well, in the well. So, in the purport, Prabhupada explains that Maharaja Yayati, by using this figurative description, is bringing about the nature of man and woman. So, what is the nature of man? Vichinman priyamatmanaha. He is trying to satisfy his desires for sense gratification, and that is the search. Vane kaschid. So that is the search. The search in the forest of material life. This forest is compared in our life to our life. Just like in forest you search for some food, similarly in this forest of material world, we are searching for objects of sense gratification to satisfy the hunger of the senses, or the thirstiness of the senses. As a king goes for hunting in a forest, similarly every conditioned soul is hunting in this forest of material world for objects of sense enjoyment to satisfy his senses. And obviously, Dadarshu Kupe Patitam Ajam, just like Maharaja Yayati spotted this girl Devayani in the well, And then they both got attracted, and then they got united, and they satisfied their senses. Although Maharaja Yayati tried to satisfy his senses, he was not satisfied. So similarly, we also in this material world are trying for satisfying our senses, and therefore are have set on for hunting. Just like the king goes for hunting in the forest, similarly every conditioned soul is working day and night and is using his legs to wander all over the world, all over the universe, and perhaps even other universes. Brahma Bhuvanal Loke. In all the three worlds, the conditioned soul is moving up and down. Why? Wandering for hoping that there is a possibility to satisfy himself, either in earth or in heaven, or if not, at least in hell. So he is prepared to accept any kind of enjoyment, if not in earth and heaven. He is prepared for satisfying, getting some kind of satisfaction even in hell or hellish life. Therefore we see this hunger for sense gratification or satisfying the senses is so strong, so acute, that the conditioned soul does not matter what is that kind of enjoyment, somehow he wants to satisfy his senses. And therefore we see, even if the spirit soul takes on the body of a hog, he is happy to be satisfied getting the quality of enjoyment of that of a hog. We can just imagine the quality of happiness of that of a hog is very, very abominable, very detestable, very undesirable. Still the hog somehow wants to get some satisfaction. That means the conditioned soul has gone to such an extent, somehow I want to satisfy my senses, forgetting to what level he has stooped down. This is the unfortunate position of a conditioned soul in this material world. In contrast, we see the soul's original nature is Satchidananda, seeking transcendental bliss, and somehow being disconnected or lost that opportunity for transcendental bliss, we are trying to become happy, even if it is in the body of a hog or a dog. So this is the misfortune. So man is searching for sense gratification, hoping to satisfy his desires and fulfill his pleasures. But Prahlad Maharaj says, Nate Swartha Gatim Hi Vishnum. It's a very famous teaching by Prahlad Maharaj. He says, yes, everyone is interested in satisfying his senses. Yes. But he does not know how to satisfy his senses. He does not know actually. In vain, he is attempting so many ways without knowing exactly the process of satisfying his senses. Nate Swartagatim Hi Vishnum. He does not know that his sense satisfaction or his happiness, his pleasure lies in serving Vishnu. He does not know that. And avoiding service of Vishnu, trying to satisfy Vishnu's senses, he is engaged in satisfying his own senses, hoping to get some pleasure. And that will never be achieved or attained. So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining, that if we try to satisfy our senses directly, we will never be able to satisfy our senses directly. Our senses can only be satisfied by serving and satisfying the senses of Narayana or Krishna. Therefore he is called Rishikesha. Why Krishna is called Rishikesha? Because the secret or the formula or the technique is, by satisfying the senses of the master of the senses, automatically our senses will be satisfied. Automatically. Without separate endeavor. How? Prahlad Maharaj gives a very nice example. in the 7th canto, 9th chapter, text number 11. Very nice verse. He says, Naivatmana Prabhurayam Nijalava Purno Manam Janad Avidushak Karuno Vrinite Yadyajano Bhagavate Viditita Manam Tachatmane Pratimukasya Yatamukashri. So Pradmara is saying here, generally, we think we are serving the Lord, and that benefit is for the Lord. When you help somebody, when you extend support to somebody, it is to help him. When you extend your service to somebody, it is to help him. Similarly, we are thinking by our chanting, by our reading, by our worshipping the Lord, by our serving the Lord, offering different kinds of seva to the Lord is benefited. Is what is the general understanding. We all think like that. But here Prahlad Maharaj used the word Nijalabha Purnaha. Naivatmana Prabhurayam Nijalabha Purnaha. Nijalabha Purna means the Lord is satisfied in himself. Nijalabha Purna. The Supreme Lord is always satisfied in himself. Nijalabha Purna. So, therefore, Vididita Manam. When somebody offers some seva, some respect, some worship to the Lord, then Naivatmanaha. It is not for the benefit of the Lord. Naivatmanaha, not for the benefit of the Lord, but here it is described Yadyat Janaha. It is for the benefit of that particular person, that person, Yadyat Janaha. So, whichever person is offering respect, worship, seva to the Lord, that individual person is benefited by that seva, and not that the Lord is benefited by our seva, by our worship, by our chanting. No. So, Vidadita means a person who's in ignorance does not know this. That his service to the Lord is actually to benefit himself, not the Lord. Because of ignorance, Vidadita, he does not know that manam, respect offered to the Lord, is actually to benefit himself. Worship offered to the Lord is to benefit himself. So, Prahlad Maharaj is giving an example. Pratimukasya yatha mukashrihi. Just like you go in front of the mirror and suppose you decorate your face nicely and then you go and stand in front of the mirror. The reflection, pratimukasya yatha mukasya. Shrihi means to decorate. Yatha mukha means your own face. Pratimukha means reflection. Yatha mukha is one's own face. Prati is also called reflection. So pratimukha means reflection of one's face. Shrihi. So when you decorate your face nicely and then you go and stand in front of a mirror, the reflection in the mirror obviously becomes decorated. Seems to be decorative. That is because of the actual face being decorated. Similarly, when we serve the Lord, we will also become beautiful. We will also be benefited. It is not that the Lord is benefited, rather we will be benefited. Just like when our face is decorated, the reflection also looks beautiful and decorated. So this is a very important point. Similarly, the scriptures are saying, if we want to satisfy our senses, you cannot satisfy independently. You can satisfy only by satisfying the owner of the senses. Still, the reflection cannot be decorated. The face has to be decorated. When the face is decorated, then the reflection looks decorative. Similarly, you cannot satisfy your senses actually. It is not possible. There is no possibility. The only possibility is satisfying the Lord's senses. Only in that way we can satisfy our senses. Just like a crude example. A child in the mother's womb cannot have any source of feeding itself other than being connected with the mother's tube. It's called the umbilical cord. So the umbilical cord, the child in mother's womb is fed all its food, its nutrition, everything is supplied through that cord. There is no other way in the mother's womb. This is a crude example. That's the only way for the child to receive the food and nutrition. Similarly, we have no other way other than serving the Lord to satisfy our senses completely and fully. Any other attempt we make, it will be unsuccessful. But unfortunately, the sum and substance of material life is people are working, creating more and more ways and means, opportunities to increase sense gratification, to satisfy the senses, independent of the seva of the Lord. That is the sum and substance of material life. So we are planning for sense gratification, creating possibilities for sense gratification, arranging for sense gratification, trying to enjoy sense gratification, enjoy our senses without the Lord. So, in contrast, the Vedic way of life is not working for sense gratification, but work for self-realization. So working for self-realization. What is self-realization? Self-realization actually means coming to this understanding, to this realization, not just understanding, to this realization that I cannot be happy, I cannot satisfy my senses without satisfying the Lord and the Lord's senses. And my happiness remains solely in serving the Lord and satisfying the Lord. This is self-realization. So both are opposed to each other. Sense gratification leads to bondage. Self-realization liberates the soul from this bondage of material existence, of satisfying the senses in vain, and the conditioned soul becomes exhausted, becomes tired and sick and frustrated. That is why in the Bhagavatam very first verse it is described as trying to run after illusion. Trying to run after illusion. In this material world, the idea of sense gratification is simply illusory and remains ever illusory. As we say, Maya Marichaka. That means mirage. So in the forest, although the deer is trying to run continuously for water, there's an impression of water. There's an impression of water in the mind, not actually. Because of the hot sun, the deer is running and running and running and running continuously, hoping that there is water nearby. Because through and through in the desert, there is sand. And therefore, the deer is continuously chasing and running, hoping that there'll be water. I will be able to get water very soon. Little more distance, whole life the deer will run. So like that, in this material world, material nature will constantly dodge us, that very soon our desire will be fulfilled, very soon our desire will be fulfilled and one will be satisfied. But actually when you approach that point, you will see that just like what is mirage? The what, because it is sand and this hot sun, because of reflection of the sunlight on the sand, and because the deer is very tired, there's an impression of water because of reflection. Actually, it's illusory. There is no water there. But because of shining sand and sun rays, it appears like water. We've experienced that even in highway when we travel in the car, far distance, even in a clean tar road. Sometimes you see that there is water actually. Many such illusions are there. Illusory experiences are there. Sometimes you see fire continuously. Sometimes there is impression of water. So these are illusions. Actually, it is not there. So, but because the sand is continuous and the sunlight is there, your impression will also continue to be steady, hoping that, oh, very soon I'll get water. It's very nearby. And when you approach there, that illusory representative also will move ahead. You move ahead, the illusory representative also will move ahead. Exactly like that in our life also. I think if I fulfill this desire, my senses will be satisfied. And when you fulfill that, in other words, approaching that point, you know that it will go next point. Then you'll think, no, 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 this is not satisfying. I should try something else, something else, something else. Go on trying whole life. And senses will never be satisfied. Rather, the defect or the risk will be the desire to enjoy will only increase, not decrease. It will not decrease, it will only increase. And further, because of this, we will increase the bodily concept of life. And the hope for enjoying this body and the senses will only increase more and more. Thereby, actually, we will become more and more foolish. More and more foolish. Just like when somebody is observing a person who is little knowledgeable, he knows very clearly why the deer is continuously running. It's a foolish animal. Only exposing its foolishness more and more, that's all. Similarly, a self-realized soul observes a conditioned soul in this way. Such a foolish person, and is continuously being fooled and is becoming even more foolish day by day. By every of his attempt, he's only exposing more of his foolishness. Because there's no sense enjoyment in the senses. And it is not possible for him to directly enjoy his senses. It is not possible. That is not the method and procedure. Just like Prabhupada's famous example, if you want to nourish your body, satisfy your body, you have to eat food through your mouth. You cannot feed the body and nourish the body through any other hole. Just because there are 9 holes, you cannot push the food through rectum. That also is a hole. There are 9 holes. Rectum also is a hole. So that is not the method. Or sometimes, they will insert one pipe. Create a hole and insert a pipe and then try to feed the person. That is in a sick state. Not in normal state. Normal state, you eat food through your mouth and nourish the body. Similarly, the sick way of enjoying our senses is trying to satisfy our senses directly, independent of Krishna, without seva to the Lord. And the normal, healthy way of satisfying our senses is by serving the Lord's senses. This is the normal way. Just like normally you eat food through your mouth. Similarly, normal way of satisfying senses is by satisfying the Lord's senses. So this has to be very clearly understood. So what is this bodily concept? This bodily concept is the belief. Actually, that's why it's a concept. See the word concept in English. That's why Prabhupada always use the word bodily concept. Concept means it's a concept. It may not be true. May be true. It's a concept. So bodily concept of life. That means it's our belief. It is not a fact. Need not be a fact. But in this case, necessarily not a fact. That is why it's called bodily concept of life. So what is this bodily concept of life? It's a certain belief. What is that belief? The belief is like this. To think, to believe that, and to have a life of conviction that I am this body. I believe I am this body. I think I am this body. And I live a life surrounding this idea that I am this body. And further, this body is the ultimate truth. To satisfy my senses, the highest aim of life. And this is the very purpose of my life, very purpose of creation. And Everything in this creation is meant to facilitate, to satisfy my senses. One who lives with this idea of life, he is said to be in bodily concept of life. So that is why, based on this idea, the concept of hedonism has come up. What is hedonism? Hedonism means the pursuit of pleasure. But the central theme is to satisfy one's desires surrounding this body, bodily concept of life. Eat, sleep, make merry. That's all. This is hedonism. This is the central theme of life. Further, this bodily concept of life also extends to accommodate not only I am this body, others are their bodies, and I have to satisfy my body. Others also should satisfy my body. They should also should satisfy their bodies. So, pleasure connected with my body, pleasure connected with others' bodies. In this way, he extends his bodily concept of life and expands his scope of satisfying his body and senses. All connected with his body. And that the body is myself. Body is reality, it is eternal, and I am this body. So this is bodily concept of life. They don't have any other understanding beyond this. So the Shastras rather reveal us that there is a serious purpose of life, a noble, sublime purpose of life, which is self-realization. Which is, what is self-realization? Self-realization means to realize that I am part and parcel of Krishna, and my eternal duty is to serve the Lord, in that way be eternally happy. So this is self-realization. So, and enjoy the highest quality of sense happiness by being connected with the Lord. In contrast to the lowest quality of happiness in the bodily concept of life. So that is why self-realization means caring for the soul and the soul satisfaction. And sense gratification means caring for the bodily satisfaction, which is of the lowest quality. So, if we analyze, even though we are satisfying this body continuously, it is not getting satisfied. So, one must think and reflect why I am not satisfied. Why I am not satisfied? Even though I am continuously trying to satisfy, why I am not satisfied? So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains this. Avritam jnanametena jnanino nitya vairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena anilena cha. Dushpurena anilena cha. That means this kama, this desire to satisfy the senses, burns like fire. Continuously burns like fire without being satisfied. So our material desires can never be satisfied. It always burns like fire constantly. It can never be satisfiable. That is the nature of material desire. So unless this is understood, we will continuously attempt to satisfy our senses and become frustrated and dejected. So that is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very nicely sung in a similar way, communicating this a similar idea in his song Anadi Karma Phale. He says, "E Vishaya hala hale, diva nishi hiya jwale, mana khabu sukha nahi paye, sukha nahi paye." I have never experienced happiness in my life. Manaha, satisfaction of my mind. Diva nishi hiya jwale. This lust is constantly jwale, burning. Diva nishi hiya. Day and night my heart is burning from the vicious poison of these worldly activities. And my mind is never satisfied. In fact, E Vishaya hala hale. He is comparing this material desires, all worldly activities, to poison. Vishaya hala hale. Vishaya means worldly activities. sense gratificatory activities, sense gratificatory attempts. Hala hala means poison. So he's comparing our attempts for enjoying in this world to poison, consuming poison. So such a foolish act to consume poison. You want to live right, you should take nectar, not poison if you want to live. Similarly, you want to satisfy your senses, so you should not take poison of material desires. Rather, you should take to the nectar of Krishna Seva to satisfy your desires. So that is what is shown in this pastime. That we will see eventually Yayati described that he was not satisfied at all. Although trying to satisfy his senses for 1000 years, it will never be satisfied. It will only increase the flames of fire of material desire. That's all. So let's stop with Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.